Well, hey everybody. Welcome to Sharpen Your Shutter. Um, when I was thinking about the process of when I first learned Photoshop, and it can be incredibly daunting. And I can remember sitting in the office of the man who was mentoring me, and he started working on one of my images, and I wrote down everything he did as if there was a formula. Now, I didn't know back then, but there really isn't a formula, but there are tools that you will use repeatedly. And how I want to grow Sharpen Your Shutter, and I plan to release videos pretty often teaching you this, is just tools to put in your tool belt that will help you build your image. So the first tool that I want to talk about is what I do the minute I open up my image. I open up my image in Photoshop and it'll immediately open into something just like this. It's called Camera Raw. If you're photographing in RAW with your camera settings, then when you immediately open it, it will look exactly like this. Now the funny thing about Adobe Camera Raw is there's no other software. It is tucked deep inside Photoshop. But the thing about Adobe Camera Raw is it's the red-headed stepsister to Lightroom. So what the folks at Adobe did was they took all of the awesome features of Adobe Camera Raw, made it pretty, put some hair extensions on it, and then released it as Lightroom along with a cataloging system. So a lot of the prep work that I'll do, and you'll hear us talking a lot, we work in a very painterly way, and so we approach our images just like we would a canvas. And so this is a very painterly way to prep our canvas. That's what I do with Adobe Camera Raw, is I prep my canvas. So I'm just going to walk you through some steps that I do to prep my image so that I can get it into Photoshop and really start taking it off. The first thing that I'm going to do is set my white point. So I'm going to hold down my Option key, and when you can see that, my screen goes dark every time I press it. Now I'm going to grab my whites right down here, and I'm going to pull this up until it gets lighter. Now in this, I can tell I didn't really shoot this to the right. It's a little darker than I'd like it to be, so I'm going to lift it up and make it a little brighter. Go back and check my whites and see, now we can see that we're a little bit bright. You really want to push this as much as you can without really seeing any sort of blue, or that'll show blown out pixels, and you just really don't want that. I'm getting a tiny bit here, but I'm not going to worry about that. Next, we want to restore our blacks. So I'm going to hold down the Option key again, press down on my blacks, and I'm going to pull it down to restore my blacks to make sure that they're right where they need to be. Now as you can see, there's a little bit of information there. There's a little bit of darks. That's just perfect. That's just enough. And now you can see we went from having, let's see, plus 11 minus 42. We went from straight out of camera to plus 11 and plus minus 42. And you can just see how much it's changing it. See, even that little bit is just establishing a lot of depth to it. Really, I don't touch too much of my clarity at this point. I'm not really touching anything of my saturation ever here. You can always bump a tiny bit of your vibrance if you want. The other really fun key is going over here to FX. So this is all of your toolbars, and they have all of these fun things underneath here. If you go to FX and you bump up your dehaze tool, it's kind of going to give you a little bit more texture. Let's do that again. Look at it there, and then we're going to move it to here. Do you see how it did that again? Let's look at it again. So specifically watch over here with the texture where the bark is. I'm going to double click. Right about here. Do you see what it did? It just gave so much texture, and it's just so beautiful. So I think for this image, I am going to go ahead and keep it right there. Let's go step by step through what I'll do. The first thing I'll do is I'll set my white point just like we did in my black point. I'll go over to dehaze, and I'll bump that up a little bit. Now what you can do is you can click on this button. It's right underneath your lens correction. You can hit enable profile corrections. Now sometimes this will do this on its own, but sometimes you've got to get in here and try to fix it. Now I used my Fuji 16 to 55. It was probably at 55, so I'm going to kind of set that there. Watch what happens to the image. Do you see it right here? Look on the corners, over here and over here. You see how it just changed it a little bit. It's recognizing that the camera and the lens itself is going to have a little bit of some bend. It's going to kind of fix that for you. So I will do that. And let's go back here. I'm not going to really measure. These are very important. The hue, saturation, luminance slider, those are really important, but I really don't do that in my prep work. Literally, all I do to prep it is just what you saw, that little bit. So now you've seen my very first step in using Adobe Camera Raw to prep my image.